what's wrong with people? I mean, has the world gone mad? We tend to act and not think. We tend to react and not reason. It looks like society's nervous system is just on fire right now as we go to air. At this point in time in history, the world is just so divided, so polarized, so angry. You go online, someone's angry. You go down the street, someone's angry. You go to the shop, somebody's angry. Behind the wheel at home, there is anger and rage and dysregulation wherever we look. You know, they say that 30 to 40% of U.S. adults struggles with emotional dysregulation, and we believe that that number is pretty conservative. And if you take people with ADHD, which accounts for at least 15 million Americans, they say that up to 70% struggle with emotional dysregulation, like getting angry easily, like being oversensitive, and like being defensive. And this is just ubiquitous right now in our society. But the question is, it's not about whether people have gone mad or people are crazy, but whether something is going on inside our brains. What's happening inside the human brain right now? We believe that it's to do with an overactive side of the brain that deals with emotions and an underactive or underdeveloped side that deals with thinking. And today we're going to be talking about how millions and millions of people are reacting because there is a misfiring or a miswiring in our brains that is designed towards chaos. And it probably stems right back from our childhood, as we've been discussing. So we welcome you to the I'm at a Mindset with Gail and James, or James and Gail. We're still trying to work that out, but we're pleased to have you with us. We're going to be unpacking this, and we're going to be talking about ways, one, that we can identify dysregulation in us, and two, how we can achieve regulation inside our brains. And it's very much a neurological brain issue that we're going to be talking about. Now, Gail, I think this all came from when we went to California. We spoke about that in episode 1. We'd been recently married and something like a switch flipped inside of me. And I'll be candid and say that I had struggled with anger and anger regulation in the past. But something triggered when we were in California, and I went through some episodes that were very manic in their dysregulation. So we were testing for COVID back in 2021, 2022, and we were at Santa Monica Beach, and it was there while we were testing and having the experience of our lives that at the same time, I was having these unregulated moments where I would just fire up unexpectedly without warning, something that I would perceive in someone or in you. And I had this fight or flight reaction. And for me, it was flight. I mean, no one really knows about it. We haven't really discussed it and publicly, but I would just take off in the middle of Los Angeles. And you would be having to try to find me in the car. You'd never been there before.
Right.
And there was just no indication as to where I was. And for me, the world was just coming to an end. I was just emotionally manic, dysregulated in every way due to trauma and due to a lot of things. And it really got us thinking back then, 4 years ago, that this was something deeper than just feeling like I was going crazy. There had to be a deeper reason. It was in the brain. And, you know, it's relieving for me to learn that it is not that I was going crazy or that something was wrong with me per se as a person, my worth,
Right.
but that there was something amiss in the brain that had happened over time. And so today, when we talk about neuroscience and the brain, we're going to be talking about a couple of big words. The first one is amygdala, which is a part of the brain, or there's two amygdalae, and we're going to be talking about the prefrontal cortex.
Right.
And these are two things that are meant to work in balance, but for some people, they're not balanced. What have you found about the amygdala? What does the amygdala do? What is its function? What have you learned?
That's your alarm system. That's your fight or flight. So when you were dysregulated and you found fear, or your brain said, hey, something's off, I'm worried, I'm scared, whatever, that's your amygdala. The prefrontal cortex is what is supposed to help you regulate and say, no, there's no fear. There's no reason to have fear here. Or yes, there is danger, prepare. But your amygdala is maybe a little more mature than your prefrontal cortex, because your amygdala, it starts with your alarm systems very, very early. But your prefrontal cortex doesn't really start regulating on its own until maybe 5 years old or so. So up until that point, your child brain is depending on your parents to help you learn how to regulate all of your
Yes.
emotions.
Yeah.
So it's a little behind in its development, and you don't actually develop your prefrontal cortex until mid-20s, 28, something like that.
28.
Yeah.
So these are parts of the brain. So the amygdala, there's two of them. They're on either side of the brain, on the two hemispheres, inside the temporal lobe, which is just here where your temple is. And the prefrontal cortex is just behind your forehead on both hemispheres of the brain. And they have two functions, as you've said. The amygdala is developed very early because the way God designed us as babies, whenever there's a threat, you want to have an emotional reaction to protect you from that threat.
Exactly.
So even as a baby, you notice babies reacting to perceived threat, or a baby can get scared and they have that amygdala reaction. I wrote down a few things that it does. It detects danger or threat or emotional intensity. And God put it there because it's essential for our survival.
Right.
And so as a baby, you develop it, even 0 to 3, a baby's starting to build this defense. But what you were saying is that the prefrontal cortex lags behind in its development. And that balance is so essential to regulating emotion. That's why I guess you see teenagers struggling to regulate emotion and not knowing what to do with all their hormones and their emotions, because their amygdala is probably pretty well developed and giving all those signals, but their prefrontal cortex is not regulating that development. And the prefrontal cortex, some other thoughts I had here, governs reasoning, focus, empathy, moral judgment, and impulse control. And the amygdala needs to be kept in check by the prefrontal cortex so that we can respond to things and react to things appropriately. But when the prefrontal cortex is not strong, it creates emotional instability. There's no clarity in decision making, and you get this imbalance. We're talking about how neither of these two things are bad in of themselves. It's the imbalance that we have between the two of them.
Right.
The prefrontal cortex, when it's weak or underdeveloped or even damaged, the amygdala just is overcompensating, completely unregulated, and the emotions overstimulated. And so we find that this happens in certain people. And I wanted you to maybe discuss the three types of imbalance that can occur when there's an overactive amygdala and there's a weak prefrontal cortex. I want to talk about people that are sensitive or hypersensitive, where that could come from. I want to talk about people that are reactive and just go into a rage very easily. And thirdly, I want to talk about people that are defensive. What can you tell us about oversensitivity from your experience, maybe from observing myself? Where does that come from and how does it play out?
Well, of course, all of these things can stem from your childhood and how your parents reacted to you. Therefore, you react in kind, or it can come out in other ways. I struggle with ADHD. In some ways, it's a superpower. In other ways, it's very frustrating. But I have just been diagnosed in the past couple of years. So putting a name to it really, really helped me feel better about myself and helped my self-worth.
So putting a name to it helped your
Just
self-worth.
putting a name to it, yeah.
Just knowing
That
what it
I'm
was.
right, that I'm not lazy, that I'm not crazy, that I'm not late on purpose.
Yeah.
There's a reason for this. It's not an excuse, but it gives me a name to study and to work on and help myself. So it has been such a blessing to me to just know that. But one of the things that I struggle with is, like I've talked about before, not wanting to be seen, feeling like no one cared what I had to say. And so now, as an adult in social situations, sometimes I'll go away and think, oh my, I talk too much. I shouldn't have told that. I shouldn't have said that. And there was a situation just recently that I was in, and I walked away and I was like, oh man, that person didn't talk very much, and it was probably because I talk too much. And why am I giving advice about something when I'm no expert? And just questioning everything. And maybe that person didn't talk because they didn't want to talk. So I don't know, but I'm very, very sensitive in that, and questioning myself with those type things.
It's interesting when you see the oversensitivity that I display, and I have plenty of that as well. You can see, I guess you can see the objective truth that I can't see in those moments.
Right.
And I remember when it happened to you, just knowing that I didn't think that there was anything you had said or you'd spoken too much, but I can see the real struggle inside, because that hypersensitivity is always there. And it's a part of ADHD. It's a part of this imbalance in the brain. It's a neuroscience thing. I guess that's the beauty of distinguishing a diagnosis of ADHD, and perhaps it's linking your childhood and realizing that's not me. This is something that I have to suffer with, but it doesn't define me or who I am. That's something separate to me.
Right, right. And with ADHD, that was a survival response in my childhood. I've learned that that's something I developed to try and focus my attention elsewhere when there was so much toxicity and chaos going on in my life, or negativity or traumas. And I was focusing elsewhere. And so it was a survival response. And a lot of people have that.
They say that the oversensitivity, it comes from conditionality in the parent. When you sense as a child, and you were telling me 0 to 3, like babies are sensing, we were talking up to 7 in a prior episode, but you were reading something this week that those years between 0 and 3, when that child is looking up for validation, attention, looking for a parent, a mother, if the love appeared to be conditional, or there's a missing element in that connection, that child will develop this hypersensitivity where it's looking for cues. Are we okay?
Right.
Am I safe? Are you there? Am I protected? And that childhood, I guess, deficiency then grows into an adult sensitivity where you're looking for cues everywhere and trying to find out, are we okay?
Right, right. The conditional love. Some people develop hypochondria because that's the only time they got the love from the parent.
That's true.
And that's really sad.
And wasn't it, there's a Munchausen syndrome?
Yeah, Munchausen's.
Munchausen's. These are mental health issues that very possibly come from this deficiency where people are craving attention, love, empathy, sympathy. And so they will convince themselves, and for them it would be very real that they were experiencing these things. For me, when it comes to sensitivity, being hypersensitive to tone, hypersensitive to body language, facial expression, even microexpressions.
Right.
And I have found that with us, during this period of dysregulation, I would hear your tone. I would perhaps see something in your body language, in your eye contact, anything as minute as you can imagine. And I would react to those cues. Now, to someone watching on, they'd think, what is going on? That's not even there. But you get so attuned to watching cues and reacting to those cues. And I consider myself a good reader of people because I'm very sensitive to these micro expressions and body language, nonverbals. But I think that was an overcompensation from this insecurity that I had as a child, which then became sensitivity as an adult. And so that's one aspect of this underregulated, unbalanced brain. Now, the other one is reactionary, reactiveness, unpredictable anger, inconsistency, indiscipline as a child. These are the reasons for why this happens. So if you're growing up 0 to 3 and there's a lot of tension in the home, there's a lot of shouting, there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of slamming of doors and emotional dysregulation in the parents, then that is very much modeled and it becomes a form of emotional literacy for that child.
Right.
Not that you even have to think about it growing up, but just in those formative years, 0 to 3, if that child is exposed to that, or there's this inconsistency of discipline, then what can result is a mimicking of that in adulthood. And so this one is not so pleasant to talk about, but it's, I guess, the jumping off point for this episode, because not only have we seen it in ourselves and in our married lives, in our parenting, but also it happens all the time. I mean, we both are in the working world. Not a second day goes by without coming across a client that is emotionally dysregulated, or we have become emotionally dysregulated in certain situations. And like I said at the beginning, you get online and there are people on social media spouting a lot of hatred towards other people. And like I said at the outset, there's tribalism where there's two different tribes and the temperature is very high.
Right.
And I believe that this may well come. And I would almost with certainty for a lot of people that this comes from this imbalance in the brain, where we are functioning with a hyperactive amygdala. And when that happens, it shuts down the prefrontal cortex. One affects the other that way.
Right.
Yeah. Have you found that in your life where your, I guess, anger was dysregulated, or you felt that coming out?
Yes.
I have to tell you guys
Yeah.
that the whole concept of starting this podcast was that we would use our experience to help others. And that's not an easy thing. We don't want to put our stuff out there, and we're trying to be very careful. But I feel like we can only learn when we are being open.
Right. One situation comes to mind when I was dropping my children off many years ago. My children are grown now, but when I was dropping my children off and they're at the school, they were rerouting traffic because they were building something, a gym or something. They were constructing a new building. So they rerouted it. Well, I thought the rerouting was really stupid. It did not make sense. And
well, especially when you're on a deadline, nothing makes sense.
They had us going this way. I felt like we should have been going this way. It was just completely stupid. And there was no part of me that could control the situation. But I was taking my children. I dropped them off. And after dropping them off, thankfully, they were already inside, because I made a complete fool of myself. And I was very, very angry because one of the staff, thankfully, I didn't know them, and I hope and pray they never knew me.
And this was a long time ago.
many, many years ago. But you become that, you lose your identity in your children. Yeah. And so you are no longer Gail. You are Clancy or Shaw's mother. And so that's how I would have been identified. And I pray that I wasn't again. But that particular day, I started to go. The staff member told me to halt. And I was like, no, I've got to get to work. And they were like, no, you're not going to go, and they're just giving me the signal, and they were letting somebody else go. And so I started to go anyway, and they stepped in front of my car, and I was raging because I was going to be late for work. And I was so mad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, y'all have got this stupid route going already. After I got to work, eventually I got to go, and I looked at the situation and I felt so dumb. And I thought, I could have left earlier. Mm-hmm. I knew it was being routed that way. There's nothing I could do to change it.
Yeah.
And I made a complete idiot out of myself. I would have embarrassed my children. I don't know if my kids ever knew about that, but now they do. I'm sorry.
No, they know.
But, that is one of many times that I lost my temper. Thankfully, it was not to a greater degree, but
it didn't hurt anybody.
It didn't hurt anybody. But I have lost my temper and hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
I have, I'm sure, 100 times yelled at my children when they didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of yelling with my previous spouse. I wasn't regulated. And it wasn't until years later that I even realized, what in the world am I doing? This is completely out of control.
You know what I was thinking as you were sharing that, and maybe some of you can relate, maybe you can relate to this as well. In those moments, you are not being the best version of yourself. You are not being
not even
your
close.
true self. This is not who we are in those moments. And that's why this is so important to address and to talk about, because maybe you too have done like Gail has done. I know I have. If you've lived long enough, these moments happen. And we live later on to regret them.
Right.
And it is important for us to recognize if it is due to some imbalance in the brain, amygdala, prefrontal cortex, then it may be very well worth our while addressing and trying to strengthen the prefrontal cortex.
Right.
Because it can be done. It can be strengthened so that it can create that rationality back on the amygdala so we don't have moments like that. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, because it's important that we improve from where we were and where we are as a society. I feel like things have become so heated at this time that it has even turned into violence. And, I just want to take a moment to recognize that that is the ultimate form of dysregulation. And that's where we definitely want to recognize that that is just not acceptable in our world. And this is our time that we are living in. Our children are watching. And the onus is on us as grown adults, no matter our background and our damage,
Exactly.
to say to ourselves, enough is enough. We do not want to be these people. We want to be different. We want to humanize those who see things different to us. And we don't want to walk around with fire and brimstone and leaving bad reputations wherever we go because of our mismanagement of our emotions and anger. It can be done, but it takes proactivity.
Right. And you only get one life. How do you want to live it?
Yeah.
Do you want to be the best version of yourself? It's going to take some work.
Yes.
Digging deep, making sure that you do the hard work.
Yeah.
Because we can all do hard things, and we can all be better versions of ourselves, for our children, for our loved ones, for society.
Yeah. And that brings me to the third. So we looked about sensitivity or hypersensitivity. We looked at reactiveness or overreaction, anger. The third one is defensiveness. This one is a pretty tough one, because defensiveness is where you refuse to take responsibility, where you self-justify, you deflect, you shut down, you don't want to listen. You don't want to listen to what other people say. And perhaps this may not seem as reactionary as the other ones, or overtly reactionary, but it can lead to some of the other stuff when someone is defensive and I am entrenched and this is my line in the sand and I will not see it your way. I refuse to see it your way. Surprisingly, that isn't just conviction a lot of the time. It's also the amygdala shutting down the prefrontal cortex to any rational reasoning. And I'm just going to put a hedge around that because I don't want to listen to it.
Right.
And that is very damaging as well. On either side of religious spectrum or political spectrum or ideological spectrum, no matter where you are, wherever you're listening from, we need to all recognize that a lot of our entrenchment is because we just don't want to listen. No. I don't want to listen to you. And some of it is fight or flight, anxiety or fear, this emotion, this reaction that we get. We can feel it in our bodies.
It is adrenaline and cortisol.
Cortisol. We release
Right.
cortisol.
Your
And
hormones.
even when we're defensive, and that comes from childhood as well. If there was harsh criticism as a child, if there was self-protection, if there was narcissistic parenting, then we in turn, I guess, mimic that as well. And that's a form of dysregulation.
Well, and your amygdala, it links your emotions to your memories. So your earliest memories may not even be back to 3 years old or 5 years old, but what you are remembering is the way you were talked to, and you're emulating that in the way you react to things.
That's right.
Now.
That's right. It's amazing how our emotional memories are stronger than just historical memories.
Exactly.
Whenever we attach emotion to something, I have a shocking memory, but one really emotional moment for me was the death of my father when I was 20, 21, back in 1995, which is now 30 years ago. And I can remember it like it was yesterday because I attached emotional memory to that from my amygdala. also the birth of my children. So emotional memory is very strong, even if it's in your subconscious as a baby, 0 to 3.
Right. Because you're relying on your parents' emotions. You
Yes.
can't regulate at that time. So
No.
it's basically your parents' emotions that you are going to take in, because
Yes.
it's not what happens to you, it's how you receive what
That's right.
happens to you
That's right.
inside.
We spoke about that in a previous
Right.
episode. Not what happens to you, but what happens inside of you. Worth thinking about if you're a parent listening to this. Sometimes in the emotion of the moment, we don't think about it. I certainly did not, and live with regret as a result of that.
Same.
But it's well worth thinking about the impact that can have on a child, especially an infant. There are certain types of people that are particularly susceptible to these dysregulations, and there's been some studies, some neuroimaging studies on the brain. I know Dr. Amen is one scientist that has looked into the brain and the brain function. And they said that certain people that are susceptible, some of those are people that have experienced chronic stress. And I was thinking on that. I mean, you go through a lot of stressful things in life, but now, because of social media, TV, just everything that you watch on the news is so easily accessible that we're reliving those stress reactions every day when we get online. Our young people are watching crimes online, violence online. Before we used to talk about the movies, violence in the movies, but now all you got to do is turn on the news online and you get that chronic stress.
Right.
And not to mention, if you are doom scrolling every day or just checking your Facebook every day, the amount of stress that is released, those hormones that are released, makes you susceptible.
Right.
There are people that have experienced trauma, survivors of trauma. That's trauma with a capital T, like abuses and things like that. That produces stress reactions like cortisol, but also it shrinks the prefrontal cortex neurons as well. So we're not talking now of an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. We're talking about a damaged prefrontal cortex and even a diminished prefrontal cortex.
Right.
Even childhood trauma, even trauma from what we've been talking about, immature parenting, trauma with a small t, so to speak, can lead to that hyperactivity of the amygdala and the PFC, prefrontal cortex underdevelopment. Also, people with ADHD, which you've mentioned, people with depression and anxiety, adolescents who haven't fully developed in their brain balance, and also people, and this is an interesting one, people that have high digital overstimulation and addictive behaviors. So this is dopamine flooding and just hyperactivity in the brain. And it makes me think of people that are gamers, people that are constantly receiving visual stimulation from online sources, pornography, which is a big deal in society. All of these things lead to a susceptibility and a lot of anger that comes as a result of those symptoms. We are here to tell you that
what about sports?
Sports? Tell me more.
What about the damage from getting hit in football and different sports?
Oh, yeah, you mean CTE?
Yes, CTE.
Yes, like brain damage.
Right.
Yeah.
Actual brain damage.
Yes, absolutely. Because the prefrontal cortex is in the forehead or behind the forehead. Yes, CTE is when there's a lot of jarring in sports, especially high contact sports. And that can actually damage the prefrontal cortex.
Right.
Yeah, we've seen that with certain athletes that have committed crimes, and then after postmortem, they've found out that they
committed, unalive themselves.
Yeah, things like that.
Right.
Pretty heavy stuff due to diminished capacity in their brain, and often their brains were damaged irreparably as a result.
Exactly.
So that's right, CTE. I thought you were going to say just watching sports. I thought you were going to tell all the men in America that watching the Super Bowl is bad for your emotional regulation. Maybe it is, but we're referring to the CTE aspect of it. The shift that I wanted to make is that we can rebuild the PFC, the prefrontal cortex. It can be healed. There's a thing called neuroplasticity, and that's a bit of a mouthful. Neuroplasticity, that is the brain's God-given ability to rewire and adapt given the right conditions. So the brain is designed to repair itself.
Right.
if we give it the right conditions to do so. Neuroplasticity, and Dr. Amen that we referenced earlier in his book, Change Your Brain Every Day, puts it this way: you are not stuck with the brain that you have. With the right guidance, you can make it better, and I can prove it. And that's after studying the brain. He can prove that the brain has an ability to repair and be restored.
And that's a blessing.
That is a blessing. That is a blessing.
Is not lost.
No,
Yes.
absolutely. And so, and look, I have seen it in my life from where I was 4 years ago with the things that I was mentioning in California and those major dysregulations compared to today.
Very dark days compared to today.
Yeah,
yes.
very, very big
Very
difference. And, I put that down to, God's healing in my life, but I also put it down to certain things that I've attended to, some things I'm still working on, but that have helped me improve. And we just want to go through some of those to see if they could be of help to you. So in terms of restoring brain balance, we want to talk about habits and disciplines in life, like exercise. Now, exercise is sometimes a dirty word for certain people, especially when we struggle with it. I can relate to that. But even when it comes to just getting moving, I remember we joined a gym a while back because I read somewhere or watched something that talked about how exercise was good for depression. And it was very helpful to get things flowing and make you feel better about yourself and for mood. And that was very helpful. We would be going 5 days a week, and mainly we would be just doing the walking, the aerobic exercises. And that just in of itself, even going for a walk of an evening, can just help with mood, with regulation, and with depression. It doesn't have to be to lose weight. I was obsessed for many years about I've got to exercise to lose weight. That is a different discussion. But this is just staying moving, staying active, getting out in vitamin D and in the sun.
We were specific about it helping with depression and our mental health because I had just come off of antidepressants after almost 30 years. And so we were looking for an alternative to that.
Yeah. And so we found it very helpful.
It was very helpful, yes.
And just getting that heart pumping. So I think we were doing 60 minutes of an evening. Nutrition. Tell me about nutrition specifically, because again, some people go, nutrition, but specifically, what things could we be eating more of and what things should we be eating less of that would help this balance in the brain?
Well, omega-3s, fish is really good for your brain. I've just read that 1 in 4 people have gluten sensitivity. I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
So I have to avoid gluten. And that's basically the glue that holds breads and pastries and things, flour together. 1 in 4 people. It causes an inflammation in your body, and some people have back pain from it. I personally, when I get glutenized, is what I call it, when I get glutened, then my joints ache.
She
my
feels
back
it in her
aches.
joints.
I do.
Like an old lady.
Yeah.
But it's
like I'm
gluten.
100.
Some people wouldn't connect the two.
No. And also dairy causes an inflammation in your body, and various things.
And in the brain.
And in the brain, yes.
Also staying away from sugars.
Yes, sugar is really bad.
And processed foods. So nutrition can definitely play a role, especially when it comes to inflammation in the brain. I also wrote here sleep. Now, can we skip this one?
No.
I'd like to skip this one.
Can't skip it.
Sleep. Okay, let's move on to the next one.
This is coming from a FOMO.
Yes.
Who does not like to sleep.
Let's talk about it, shall we? Whether I would like to admit it or not, I do struggle with sleep, and it's not something that I can blame on anybody else. And I do see a correlation between sleep and dysregulation. In fact, a lot of my moments of dysregulation have come when I have been overtired or haven't had enough sleep. And so this one, I guess everyone has their challenges, and this one is mine, but I definitely do see a correlation between them. And so having a sleep schedule, apparently the sleep before midnight is best. So, but yeah, being able to get into REM sleep and have deep sleep. You can take melatonin if you're having trouble.
That's what I have to do is take,
sleep.
I have to take melatonin because with ADHD, ADHD. I have a hard time shutting my mind down.
Yes.
So I will wake up multiple times. Plus, I suffer from menopause. So that wakes me up in the middle of the night with the hot flashes and stuff. So the combination of those two is murder on my body.
Yeah.
So melatonin is my best friend right now.
Yeah. We sound like a bit of a mess, but
we are a hot mess.
No, we're at that age where you start to pay a bit of a price for certain neglect. So
I do want to say that you are a very gentle spirit. So your dysregulation is completely opposite.
Yeah.
To your character, to you as a person. You're a very gentle spirit. So when you are dysregulated, it is a red beacon that something is going on.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah, it has been a challenge. And that's why I guess I'm so passionate about and so keen to talk openly, because I know I'm not the only one. I know this is a common issue. When it comes to sleep, I was going to mention one other thing. Sleep apnea can be an issue, and being a mouth breather. And for the sake of, I guess, sharing, we want to talk about that it's ideal to breathe through your nose and not through your mouth at night. And if you're a mouth breather, we have been learning of late that it's better to even tape it up.
Well, there are these wonderful patches that have a little hole right there at the center of your mouth, and it forces your mouth to stay closed, or the kind that open most of the way, but anything to keep your mouth closed.
Yeah.
And even what we've recently learned is that even if you're stopped up, those capillaries and everything inside your nose, you won't suffocate.
Yeah.
It will open up and allow you to breathe even with your mouth taped.
It also can help that depth of sleep and that quality of sleep.
Well, from what I've learned with sleep apnea, it can cause strokes. Mm-hmm. It can cause high blood pressure, your mental fog.
Yeah.
And clarity and stuff. So
it does affect
it is
regulation,
very important,
because the parasympathetic nervous system is meant to bring that regulation back down after a high spike. And that parasympathetic nervous system is meant to create that, I think it's homeostasis. It's a calmness. And you're only going to get that if you're getting adequate rest.
Right.
And so that's why we mention, I guess, the mouth breathing, because that can preclude good rest. We also want to talk about the importance of prayer and taking a break from work, resting. We call it Sabbath. We rest every seventh day. It was found in the Blue Zones survey around the world that people that rest and that have a certain diet, they live longer. And so it is important in the cycle of the week to just take a break from work, to not work 24/7, and have that rest, that downtime, that family time. It's very important in our journey. So prayer, rest, breathing is very important to bring that regulation, the temperature down. Connection with people, deep conversations, empathy, that can also help with regulation. And I was thinking how we tend to isolate due to social media, people working from home. People have retreated far more than what we used to. So we're seeing shopping centers closing down, brick and mortar. People are interacting less. Churches sometimes are in decline, and we've become socially isolated with each other.
Especially since COVID.
That's right. And sometimes we connect with people online with extreme views, or we have this algorithm that just replays, and we end up in our own little echo chamber, our confirmation bias. We have our opinions, and all we get in our algorithm is just this chamber that confirms everything we believe. We don't want to listen to anybody else. The social isolation means we never get challenged. Iron sharpens iron. We never get support from others. We don't have conversations with people. And that is also very important with regulation.
You become very lonely.
Very lonely. Absolutely. And what we're lacking is dialogue, and dialogue with people that have differences of opinions, who think differently to us. It's healthy for us to not just surround ourselves with that echo chamber, because what if we're wrong on some things and we never take a step back to say, hold on, could there be some value in this? And
Right.
seeing the other person as human. Dare I say it, from the opposite end of the spectrum, as someone who has a completely different lifestyle to you, would there be some value in reaching across the aisle and listening, seeing that person as a real human being, dialoguing together, asking questions? In terms of the Bible and Jesus and the example that was given, there was no ostracizing of people. There was no marginalizing of people that thought differently.
Mm-mm.
The opposite was true. He would often go outside the social circles and what was the norm to connect with other people. And
Exactly.
so that's very important in our societal dysregulation. And lastly, not least, limiting that digital content, the doom scrolling for the sake of just this brainless consumption that we have, that has also, has a dumbing down effect
Right.
on the brain, and it is just not healthy. And we all do it. It's safe, it's comfortable. It's kind of what people do of an evening. It's apparently what people do in the restroom, in the toilet, but it just doesn't get the brain active. They say that we have to engage our brains in activity, in decision making, even in Sudoku, making hobbies, things where the brain can be engaged actively, not sitting passively all the time, and that prefrontal cortex just switching off.
Right. Creating new neural pathways.
That's right. Because that prefrontal cortex is so important in making moral choices and decisions and thinking rationally. And if it just gets switched off due to passivity, then the amygdala just reigns supreme. And we're just all about the emotions. So it really starts internally first, and then there's an external change that results. And eventually, we believe that there can be a collective healing. So just some practical steps that we can share, things that we can do. Daily affirmations through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, replacing lies with truth. We're restating. You're very big on this, verbally restating things. Why is verbally stating things so important for you?
Because you've already received so much negativity in your life, and you're believing it about yourself and your self-worth. It diminishes your self-worth.
Yeah.
So you've got to replace it with positive affirmations to say, no, I do deserve, happiness. I do deserve calmness. I do deserve peace, and I am worthy. Just positive affirmations create new neural pathways that replace the old negative highways that we have been fed and believed most of our lives.
It's not easy to do, especially
No.
when you're in the heat of the moment. And so we would recommend that these affirmations be done in the morning or in the evening as we're going through our daily routines, rather than just leaving it to those moments where the brain is just not kicking in. Because I know for me, in those moments, my rational brain has shut down,
Right.
and I don't have that capacity to say, I'm worthy in that moment. Your brain is just going a million miles an hour.
Well, I have found, and I started this for myself. I feel like it's a gift I gave myself years ago. Just giving myself grace, giving myself a break.
Yeah.
And instead of saying, Gail, that was so dumb.
Although you mentioned it earlier, I was going to catch out when you were driving at the school. You said I was behaving so stupidly.
I
But,
was.
Yeah, but we
I
don't
was.
want to be calling ourselves those
No.
things.
And at that time, during that period of time, that's exactly what I was saying to myself. And that's exactly how I was feeling. I did
And
not
you've learned.
know my worth. So I gave myself a gift.
Yeah.
And I talked to myself. Somebody may think that I'm Looney Tunes. I don't care.
Yeah.
It works. And I talk to myself often, and I will call myself out and say, Gail, that was silly, or laugh at myself, or Gail, don't forget this.
Yeah.
Whatever I say is positive to myself, and I promise you it works. It works.
I guess when you don't hear a lot of affirmation out loud, it is a gift to yourself
It
and to your
is.
child self. And let's not forget to affirm each other as well and be very specific
Absolutely.
about it. We want to mention just quickly music therapy. For me, music therapy
It's
has
big
been
for both of
major.
us.
We
Yeah.
love music. And sometimes it has pulled me through some really difficult moments. just listening to music. I love worship music. And so we will sometimes just turn that on, and you may be in a dark place, but slowly those things begin to soothe. They begin to moderate brain activity, they've found. They regulate physiological responses. They can calm things down, and they can definitely improve coping and mood. So music therapy. And I also want to mention learning balance response. So we've talked about CBT, daily affirmations. Let me give you an example of a daily affirmation. I am always enough. I am worthy of love and respect. I am in control of my emotions. My struggles don't define me. That's some affirmations. Music therapy, I guess the music of your choice, something that's going to be soothing to you. But this balance response, I think we need to rehearse what we could do in those moments where things are just out of control. First, to pause and maybe to count up to 10 and just create some space before the response. It may even require you to exit the room just to put some space, to pause, number one. Number two, to breathe. Reset your nervous system with breathing, deep breathing. Breathe in through your nose, hold it, and then breathe out through your mouth is very important in just calming things down. Thirdly, to listen, understand, be open, don't attack, be willing to hear the other person, listen to what they're saying, reflect, don't automatically shut down. Number four, to see them as a human being. We are not to be enemies with anyone with flesh and blood that's human. We're to love them and show them respect. And that is not easy, but it's important for us to keep that in mind. See. And lastly, to shift and choose a better thought or perspective. So number one, pause. Two, breathe. Three, listen. Four, see. And five, shift to a different response. Maybe shift it to a positive response and think to yourself, rather than this is fear or anxiety, this is excitement. I can channel. Sometimes it's the same sort of response, and
Yes.
I'm excited about
Your
this.
body reacts the same
The
way
body reacts
with
the
fear
same.
and excitement.
So rather than going, oh, I'm so nervous to get up on stage, no, I'm excited, and I'm going to channel that response in a positive way and a positive perspective.
It's a good challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So remember that internal fix is where it starts. That's where real change begins. Fixing the world starts with fixing the individual. Healing starts inside. Be the best and most regulated person that you can be. That's what we want. Mm-hmm. That's what we want for us. That's what we want for you. We want to make a change in our world and in our society, and that change starts with us when we make the decision. The problem isn't emotions. It isn't having convictions. It isn't having opinions. That's all normal. It's what you do with those things. Mm-hmm. So when you differ from someone else, that's okay. But how am I going to react? What am I going to do? Am I going to see them as a mortal enemy, or are we just going to agree to disagree?
Exactly.
Emotional maturity equals feeling deeply but responding wisely. Feeling deeply and responding wisely. I want you to remember as we leave you for this episode that peace does not start online. It starts in the mind. Be the one who breaks the algorithm. Regulate your mind before you react. I hope you enjoyed the program for today. It's been great to share this with you. We want you to take that with you and see whether you can learn from it just as we have and experience that regulation, that growth that can happen because the mind was created to repair itself. So thank you for joining us on the I'm At a Mindset. Goodbye from me.
Bye for now.